10 forgotten Cabover moving vans that secretly built the modern logistics industry. Every family in America has a moving story. A new house, a new city, a fresh start packed into boxes and loaded onto a truck, driven by a stranger you trusted with everything you owned. But almost nobody remembers the trucks that made those moves possible. 10 strange forward cab trucks quietly hauled an entire nation's furniture, then vanished almost completely, forgotten by an industry that moved on without looking back. By the end of this video, you'll see how one of them, the very first one, quietly became the blueprint for the entire moving industry we still use today. Let's start at number 10. Number 10, GMC Astro Series, 1969 to 1987. Sit inside a GMC Astro for the first time, and something feels wrong. The windshield doesn't stop where windshields usually stop. It keeps going, down past the dashboard, almost to your knees. Drivers who climbed into one for the first time back in 1969 said it felt less like driving a truck and more like flying one. GM hadn't set out to build something dramatic. They were simply trying to replace their older, boxier cabovers, the ones truckers nicknamed Crackerbox, for their harsh, square lines and cramped view of the road ahead. But somewhere in that redesign, engineers made a quiet decision that would outlast the truck itself. Give the driver everything they can see, fewer blind spots, safer lane changes, a clear line of sight down both sides of the trailer, at a time when most cabovers still felt like driving from inside a shoebox. For a family trusting their entire household to a stranger behind the wheel, that mattered more than they probably ever realized. The Astro would go on to become the largest cab-over GM ever built, hauling loads up and down American highways for nearly 2 decades, right up until General Motors quietly exited the heavy truck business altogether in the 1980s. But that single obsession, visibility over everything, never really left the industry. It's still the first thing engineers chase in every cab design today, and that brings us to a truck built by a company most people have never even heard of, one that's been building trucks since before the automobile itself was fully trusted. Number 9, Autocar Cabover, 1957-1980. Autocar has been building trucks since 1899, before Ford, before Chevrolet even existed as a truck brand, longer than almost every other name on this list combined. And yet, ask most people on the street to name an Autocar truck, and you'll get silence. That silence tells you something important about how this industry actually works. Because while other truck makers were chasing glamour, chrome, long-haul sleepers, the open highway dream, Autocar was quietly building something far less romantic. Severe-duty trucks, short, punishing routes, the kind of stop-and-go, in-and-out city work that never made it into a country song. One restorer who brought a 1957 Autocar back to life spent years chasing down parts that hadn't been manufactured in decades, sourcing pieces from salvage yards, other collectors, anyone who still remembered this truck existed at all. Not because it was beautiful, because it mattered. That distinction between the trucks people fell in love with and the trucks the industry actually depended on runs straight through Autocar's entire history. Every regional delivery fleet running today, every truck built for short, brutal routes instead of cross-country glory, owes something to a company nobody put on a poster. Autocar didn't build the trucks people dreamed about. It built the trucks the industry couldn't survive without. And the next truck on this list carried something far stranger in its history, a connection to one of the most famous daredevils in American history. Number 8, Mack Cabover, 1980s. In the 1970s, a Mack Cabover became something no other truck on this list ever did. It didn't haul furniture. It didn't haul appliances. It hauled Evel Knievel. His motorcycles, his living quarters, his entire traveling show, all packed inside a 1974 Mack FS 700L Cabover, rolling from stunt to stunt across America, decades before anyone in the trucking industry used the phrase fleet branding. For a while, that truck was one of the most recognized rigs in the country, painted in Knievel's promotional colors, parked outside stadiums, part of the spectacle before the jump even began. And then, like almost everything on this list, it disappeared. By the 2000s, the truck had been abandoned in a yard in Clearwater, Florida, sitting in weeds, rusting, forgotten by almost everyone, except a small group of people who still remembered what it once was. A restoration team spent years bringing it back, repainting every inch of the original signage by hand, working from old photographs, trying to recreate something that had nearly been lost for good. When it was finally finished, it toured the country again, this time at trucking shows, not stadiums. What they saved wasn't just a truck. It was proof that long before wrapped delivery vans, before branded 18-wheelers with company logos the size of billboards, someone had already figured out that a truck could be more than transportation. It could be a message. Coming up next, a truck built almost entirely from spare parts of a completely different vehicle. Number 7. Ford C-Series two-story Falcon, 1948 to Jua, 1960s. It looked cheap, and honestly, it practically was. The early Ford C-Series wasn't really designed as a truck, it was a shortcut. Ford took its existing F-Series pickup, the frame, the mechanicals, the guts of a truck people already trusted, and simply reshaped the cab, pushing it forward over the engine to save space. Drivers gave it an unglamorous nickname almost immediately: the two-story Falcon, for its tall, boxy, top-heavy silhouette. It wasn't a truck anyone dreamed about owning. It was a truck built to be affordable, fast to produce, and easy to fix, because most of its parts already existed somewhere else in Ford's lineup. But that shortcut turned out to be smarter than it looked. Every major truck manufacturer today builds multiple models off shared platforms and shared components, cutting costs, speeding up production, keeping repair parts easy to find. Ford didn't invent that idea completely, but the C-Series proved it could work at massive scale, decades before platform sharing became standard language in the industry. The few that survive today are kept alive mostly by collectors willing to hunt for parts that stopped being made half a century ago, quietly preserving a truck history almost forgot, one that never tried to be glamorous in the first place. Which leads us to a truck built for a job most Americans never even think about: moving an entire household through the middle of a growing city. Number 6. International Harvester, L160/R190, Emeryville, Jow 1950s. Have you ever wondered why your Amazon delivery van looks the way it does? Short, boxy. The nose pushed almost flat against the windshield, like the whole front end got compressed to make room for cargo. That shape has a direct ancestor. And it was built in a factory in Emeryville, California, in the early 1950s. International Harvester needed a truck that could squeeze through narrow, crowded city streets, turn tight corners, park in tight spaces, and still carry a full household's worth of furniture in the back. The solution was a cab-forward design so extreme that drivers nicknamed it the Highbinder. It wasn't built for the open highway. It was built for the chaos of the city, for the exact kind of routing problem that last-mile delivery would become known for, 70 years before anyone used that phrase. One restoration crew rescued a 1952 model that had spent decades quietly rusting away, forgotten in a field. Months of work went into just getting the engine to turn over again, peeling back layer after layer of decay, piece by piece, before the truck ever moved an inch. They weren't just restoring an old International, they were restoring a shape. The same basic silhouette, flat nose, driver seated almost directly over the front wheels, still rolls down your street every single day, painted a different color, carrying a different logo. And that brings us to a truck born from a merger nobody expected to matter this much. Number 5. Diamond Rio Royale Cabover, 1947, Faubien, 1960s to 70s. Two struggling truck makers combined into one because neither could survive alone. That's how industry historians still describe the 1967 merger that created Diamond Rio, bringing together two once separate companies, Diamond T and REO, under a single name. It wasn't a glamorous story. There was no grand vision behind it, no bold reinvention. It was survival. Two companies, each too small to compete alone against the giants of the industry, deciding that combining was the only way either of them would still exist a decade later. The Royale Cabover that came out of that merger carried both bloodlines forward, Diamond T's rugged build, REO's engineering legacy, wrapped into one truck built to keep hauling long after either name alone might have disappeared. And that pattern didn't stay in 1967. It became the exact playbook the moving industry itself would follow for the next 50 years. Smaller regional carriers merging, one after another, swallowed into the handful of household names most Americans recognize today. The same forces that created Diamond Rio are still reshaping who owns the truck outside your window right now. The Diamond Rio Royale didn't just haul furniture from one house to the next. It hauled a warning about exactly what was coming for the rest of the industry. But the next truck on this list wasn't built to survive a merger. It was built to outsmart the law itself. Number 4. Peterbilt 352 Cabover, 1976 to 1980. Why did American trucks, for almost 3 decades, look like a brick standing on its end? The answer isn't design taste, it's the law. For years, federal and state regulations capped the total combined length of a truck and trailer together. Not the cargo space, the entire length, cab included. Which meant there was only one way to legally haul more freight: shrink the cab down to almost nothing and let the trailer take up every inch that was left. The Peterbilt 352 pushed that math to its absolute limit. A driver's seat wedged directly over the front axle, an engine buried beneath the floor. Every square inch not spent on the cab became another square inch of paying cargo space. One restoration crew spent years bringing a 352 back from the edge, stripping the frame down to bare, rusted metal, sandblasting away decades of decay, rebuilding it piece by piece until it could roll under its own power again. Not because the truck was comfortable. Drivers who spent long hauls in a 352 will tell you it wasn't, but because the math behind it never stopped being relevant. That same equation, squeeze every legal inch into cargo, waste nothing on the cab, still shapes how moving companies plan routes and load trucks today, long after the length laws that created it eventually changed. Coming up next, the truck one family still calls Grandpa's rig. Number 3, white Freightliner WTF tilt cab, Koi 1950s to 1960s. Watch this cab tilt forward, and you're watching an idea that changed truck maintenance forever. Before 1958, fixing the engine on most Cabover trucks was a nightmare. Mechanics had to crawl underneath, wedge themselves into impossible spaces, disassemble half the cab just to reach a single belt or hose. It could take hours before a wrench even touched the problem. White Freightliner solved that with something almost embarrassingly simple. The entire cab lifted up and forward like the hood of a car, exposing the whole engine bay in seconds. What used to take a full afternoon suddenly took minutes. One family still owns a 1978 model today. They call it Grizzly's Condo, a nickname passed down along with the truck itself, from a grandfather who drove it for years to a grandson who spent his own time and money bringing it back to the road. At truck shows, he doesn't just show off the paint job, he tells the story of who drove it first and why it still matters to him. That's not unusual in this world. These trucks don't just get restored, they get inherited. And the tilt cab idea behind it never stayed in the 1950s either. Nearly every modern semi-truck on the highway today still tilts forward the exact same way for the exact same reason, because a truck that's easy to fix is a truck that stays on the road. Number 2, Kenworth K100 Grasshopper Cabover, 1966. 2 years. That's how long one restoration crew spent bringing a single Kenworth K100 back from the dead. They called it Grasshopper. Nobody remembers exactly why the name stuck. Maybe it was the color. Maybe it was just something someone said once, half joking, that ended up written on the door and never came off. But by the time the restoration was finished, the name wasn't a joke anymore. It was the truck's identity. By the mid-1960s, cab-over sleepers like this one had quietly created something new in American life. Before this generation of trucks, driving was a job you went home from. Now, for the first time, drivers didn't just work on the road, they lived on it. A bunk behind the seat, a life measured in miles instead of hours. That shift didn't fade away with the decade. It became the foundation of the entire over-the-road trucking culture that still defines the industry today. The idea that the cab isn't just a workspace, it's a second home, built to be lived in for days or weeks at a time. Grasshopper wasn't rebuilt just to look good parked at a truck show, gleaming under the lights for a few hours on a Saturday. It was rebuilt to prove that this lifestyle, the one that changed how an entire generation of drivers saw their own work, mattered enough to save piece by rusted piece. And that brings us, finally, to the truck that started all of this. Number 1, Fuggiall Super Freighter, Jiao 1950s. Before any moving truck you've ever seen existed, before Mayflower, before Allied, before U-Haul, there was one truck. Historians who study this era don't hedge when they talk about it. They simply call it the definitive moving van of the 1950s. The Fuggiall Super Freighter wasn't adapted from a delivery truck. It wasn't a farm vehicle repurposed for a new job, the way so many trucks on this list started out. It was purpose-built, from the ground up, for exactly one task: moving an American family's entire life from one house to the next, safely, in a single enclosed box, built specifically to carry furniture without wrecking it along the way. 9 trucks on this list took something that already existed: a pickup frame, a delivery chassis, a design meant for another job entirely, and adapted it to hauling households. This one didn't adapt anything. It invented the job. Every enclosed moving van body you've ever seen pull up outside a house, every household goods carrier still running today, traces its basic shape, its purpose, its entire reason for existing back to this one truck. And here's the part almost nobody knows. This truck wasn't just early, it was first. 70 years later, every time a moving truck pulls up outside a family's front door, unloading boxes labeled kitchen and kids room, it's still quietly driving in the shadow of a forgotten Cabover almost nobody remembers anymore. 10 trucks. 10 stories almost nobody remembered until now. If these forgotten Cabovers taught us anything, it's that the trucks people overlook are usually the ones quietly holding an entire industry together. If you want to see the fleet that came next, the trucks that took over once these vanished from American highways, check out the playlist right here. We'll see you in the next one.